culture carries us through turbulence. When DEI gets challenged politically, tried and true cultural norms hold teams together. Look at all those companies that have upheld that and what it's done not only for their culture internally, their people, but also their business. The upside is clear. Innovation rises, retention deepens, and culture thrives. And yes, profitability often follows. When you're bridging generational gaps and doing that with inclusion, there's real business value. If you're a CEO, entrepreneur, or business owner that can't seem to figure out what is blocking you from attaining the next level of growth in your business, then listen up. I'm Maria De Lorenzo Reyes. I've taken what I've learned in 30 years working inside multi-million-dollar corporations, building my own business, and consulting my clients, and discovered 5 themes that stop a business from scaling. I've created a tool to help you get the answers you need to get unstuck and unlock the next level of growth. Head over to scale.mariadr.com and click the link to get your custom Scale Factor Formula scorecard when this episode is over. Hey everybody, welcome to Finding the Upside. I'm your host, Maria De Lorenzo Reyes. And lately, I've been reflecting on how different generations are shaping our teams, in our workplaces, in our communities, no matter what place or type of industry you work in. And I think it's often looked at with some conflict, but I want to talk about how that can be our greatest strength. Here's a spoiler alert. I'm weaving in inclusion. Even when pressure tells us to back away, that isn't just brave, it's strategic. And it's how resilient workplaces are built. Let's talk about it. Why does generational diversity matter, and why do we struggle with it? So here's some statistics that I found in researching this that still surprise me. 70% of companies say leading multi-generational teams is critical for success, but only 10% feel ready and prepared to actually do it successfully. That's from a Deloitte study. So that gap, why? It's where most people get stuck. They understand the value, but it's in the implementation where they're not really sure how to move forward. And that tension is real. Even online, I found posts where teammates argue over communication styles or digital platforms. It turns out that 67% of companies face age-based conflict at work, and 58% say it's because communication styles just don't match. Now, here's my take on how to bring it alive in your team. So, I talked about this in previous episodes, one I did a few weeks ago. Start with shared norms. And really, you can align that, or that can fall under the shared team identity. Don't let hidden rules do the work. Spell out where meetings happen, how decisions are made, how feedback flows. Start out with that and make it really clear. Bring forward benefits that actually benefit people. So I've seen magic when organizations offer not one-size-fits-all perks. So let's just say caregiving support for people with young children, phased retirement for people who are on the higher end and exiting out of their careers, or mentoring budgets tailored to interest. That's inclusion in action, and that is important in a multi-generational workforce. Also, creating structures that connect, not silo. Okay, reverse mentoring is a personal favorite of mine. I love seeing senior leaders laughing on Slack, learning emojis 101, and junior advisory boards, bringing those frontline employees as a way to advise senior strategy. They get to guide it. What a brilliant way to let fresh voices guide and direct what's happening in the future. Finding a way to create structures that connect people instead of these generations, instead of siloing them, is the way to include all and to leverage the power and the strengths of all the different generational groups. All right, let's talk about strengths. Play to strengths. I've watched veteran team members orient young generations to culture, while Gen Z brings new tools and ideas. That combo will never fail to spark innovation. So again, playing on the strengths of the different generational groups rather than focusing on the differences and getting stuck. Champion inclusion for every stage of life. Mental wellness, financial support, flexible schedules that make these equitable means everyone actually shows up as their full selves. So meaning that acknowledging that benefits and different supports are needed for different stages of life. I had someone say in a group at one time, she was a younger generation, and this was a business mastermind. He was a business owner, and he said that, he was really prideful about that he had a robust retirement strategy with 401k and different kinds of investments and whatnot. And a young staff member who was a young mother said, "That's great. Thank you for that. But honestly, I need assistance helping pay for childcare." And that was more important for her. And in that generation, in the stage of life she was in, that was kind of a aha moment for him where he said he hadn't thought about it that way. And if we think about different generations and that they're at different phases of their career and life, then we understand what type of support in each stage of life would be most beneficial. Leaders need to move beyond generational boxes. So what does that mean? To say millennials are this, boomers are that. That a lot of time is the stereotypes that lock us in to these mindsets that don't find the value in each of them. In a study that Deloitte talked about, they talked about that doing this, being able to focus on mindset and values rather than those labels, that's the lens where inclusion gets real, and that's where you can implement it. All right, so here we go. Anytime I'm talking about inclusion, anytime I'm talking about all of this, the pushback on DEI, we have to talk about that, right? Well, wait a minute. What about the pushback on DE&I? All right, so here's the deal. If creating inclusion and bridging generational gaps is a superpower, it's under fire. In early 2025, we all have heard about this. New federal policies rolled back DEI requirements in public agencies. Fast forward, companies like Target, Walmart, Amazon, Meta, and others all scaled back their DE&I initiatives under pressure. You might be thinking, that makes this episode ironic. Okay, but here's the thing. There's real cost to this. Target, when they announced their DEI rollbacks, their market took a hit. Their sales fell almost 3% in Q1, even further in Q2, and we'll see what happens in Q3. But their value also dropped by billions following consumer backlash and boycotts because of that action. And yes, they actually admitted that it harmed them. Reputational damage was done, and investor lawsuits spiked. That speaks volumes beyond any PR statement. So there's real cost to this. Then let's look at this Paramount Skydance merger that just closed in mid-2025. But only after the company pledged to eliminate DEI programs to secure regulatory approval. Really? The pressure and the capitulation continues. This sparked concerns about editorial freedom and backlash from creative communities. Yeah, people don't support this. Not all people support this, and there's real cost to these companies coming through. And yet, customers, especially among Gen Z and the LGBTQ plus community, are still showing up for brands that honor inclusion. I myself am part of Gen X and proudly only support brands that align with my ideology in that DEI is still important and inclusion and belonging is something that we have to strive for. The thing is, in a Newsweek article, it talked about how if brands do not honor inclusion and back away from DEI, then they should just be waiting for backlash because that breaks trust. So why generational bridges and inclusion are non-negotiables in business? Trust endures and labels fade. Inclusive teams aren't a flash in the pan. They're actually focused, innovative, and resilient. And culture carries us through turbulence. When DEI gets challenged politically, tried and true cultural norms hold teams together. Look at all those companies that have upheld that and what it's done not only for their culture internally, their people, but also their business. The upside is clear. Innovation rises, retention deepens, and culture thrives. And yes, profitability often follows. When you're bridging generational gaps and doing that with inclusion, there's real business value. So friends, I hope you think about this. If today's episode sparked ideas for your own multi-gen teams, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone committed to people-first leadership. Until next time, let's see the upside across generations and stay deeply inclusive no matter how much pressure we get to break that. Thank you, and see you on the next episode. All right, so I hope you loved this episode and found it valuable. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you'd be so kind, if you know someone else that this will help, please share this episode with them. Just grab a link for this specific episode, text it to a friend or colleague so it can help more people like you. Thanks so much for tuning in. I will see you next time for more entrepreneurial goodness. Same time, same place on the Finding the Upside podcast.